Hi, this is Neil from the China Sourcing Academy. We're at the Hong Kong Trade Development Council Fashion Show. This is the January edition 2016. Yes, this is part two. We actually went through and talked to a lot of suppliers here. Remember, we're looking at different parts of the sourcing chain for fashion, and you know the different parts like cotton or the original material that's going in, and then you've got the textile mills, then you've got fabric suppliers, and then you've got the garment manufacturers in the end. So really interesting that we actually talked to some of the zipper manufacturers earlier. I told you about some of their strategies about getting their customer to actually recommend a particular zipper brand when they are manufacturing the product, and it's getting the customer to tell the factory to actually recommend the zipper brand. We understand that strategy. That's very strong, and it's good to see that there are other designs out there that are competing with the YKK, which is the #1 brand in the business. We actually looked at another green solution supplier, and they were actually talking, they actually had this new brand, and it's coming out from an NGO called Confidence in Textiles. So what I mentioned earlier in part one was this push to actually ban this chemical that is used to waterproof clothing. So you have other NGOs that are pushing other different areas of the supply chain to make it more toxic free, environmental free. And so one of these is called Confidence in Textiles, and they're trusted for the absence of harmful substances, and we actually can see that here. And so there's that little brand there, we can see that. There's the brand, we got that. Oh wow, we got that. Okay, so we can see that Confidence in Textiles. There's a brand there. Look out for that. And some of the suppliers are saying that we're focusing on this, and we have to follow certain compliance records to actually get that stamp. And so that's what they're working with. Really interesting. I got to talk to a designer, and what did this designer do? This designer was making their own bags, backpacks, little fanny packs, backpacks, bags, handbags, but they were more made from canvas. So they got the leather from one factory, they got the canvas textile from Korea. They used the YKK zippers. They wanted the best in business. They wanted to make really good ones. So a little fanny pack would be about $250. We bought one of them. They're on special today for $100. But the point was that we asked this designer, what is your #1 challenge? And the big challenge was actually communicating with the factory in China. Like communicating, look, here's our design that looks like this is what we want to do. Here are all the CAD/CAM drawings. Here's all the dimensions. But still, they weren't able to communicate perfectly what exactly they wanted to get made. And the factory would come up with some sample, but it wasn't particularly exactly like they had envisaged. So this was the big challenge that this designer felt. So we're going to talk to more designers tomorrow to find out a little bit more about how they manage the prototyping business, actually the sampling, just getting a sample together. Wow, we went to another supplier and they said, 2016 is more difficult. Buyers want a cheaper price, but they want higher quality. They want their cake and they want to eat it too. So funny, isn't it? But this has been the challenge of the fashion industry for so long, and it's up for suppliers to think about how they can differentiate and actually stay in that value chain. All right, so let's keep moving here. We've got one or two others. I think, no, that just about does it. Well, one last one, I think. Oh yeah, one last one we got to talk to was a lovely guy that's running a Dongguan knitting garment factory. This is in Dongguan, so we're talking about 2.5 hours just north of Shenzhen, which is across the border from Hong Kong. Okay, and he had the factory. So about 20 years ago, he moved his factory from Hong Kong to Dongguan. At one stage, he had over 1,000 employees. Now he's got only 300. They cut down. The business has shrunk a lot in the last 20 years. A lot of it has actually moved to Vietnam, Cambodia, Bangladesh, and a lot of other places. But what he was saying, that business has dropped down, and he's getting to the stage where he's too old to think about going to Vietnam, Cambodia or Bangladesh, and so that was his challenge at the moment. So it looks like he's going to stay in Dongguan, and this is some of the challenges that they're facing from China. Overall, some of the macro picture, yes, it is bleak as it is in the news, where the suppliers are talking about 2016 is not looking as good as 2015. One last thing, on a bright spot, we actually came across a supplier that had their factory in Ethiopia. Yes, Africa, not China, Africa. And so I sat down with them to find out, okay, what are they doing? Okay, so they're making textiles. They had a textile mill, but they were also making the fabrics. And then they were knitting the fabrics. Basically, they had 3/4 of the supply chain, and they were so close to the cotton that they could actually control where the cotton was coming from to say to their European buyers and the American buyers, we have full compliance over the whole value chain. We know where our cotton is coming from, and we're in control of the fabric mill, then the textiles, weaving, knitting and weaving, and then we've got the final cutting and sewing, so we've still got control over everything. Full compliance. Now Ethiopia think, wow, why would we want to buy from Ethiopia? Get this, Ethiopia, they have free trade agreement with EU, no customs, no duty, free trade agreement USA. Wow, up until the recent agreement USA had with some of the Asia Pacific, Trans-Pacific Partnership agreement, up until then very few countries had a free trade agreement with the USA apart from South America and Canada. So very, very interesting. Ethiopia now got a free trade agreement with the USA, and they were talking about another compliance program that I've never heard of before, and this was by Greenpeace. Now Greenpeace, another NGO, has pushed another compliance program called Zero Discharge Hazard Chemical. Zero discharge of hazardous chemicals. So look out for that. Very interesting. Greenpeace is pushing that. You've got other NGOs pushing this no toxic chemicals for the waterproofing, which is a huge challenge for the sports industry that want to differentiate their hiking clothes, their snow clothes based on their waterproofing. In the end, this supplier in Ethiopia was saying that the great thing about Ethiopia is that the government is stable. They have cotton, and so they know exactly where their cotton is coming from. Has over 11,000 universities. 11,000, I can't believe that, 11,000 in Ethiopia? That must be Africa. I must be wrong. But 95% of people are going through school. So Ethiopia is hugely changed since 30 years ago plus, where it was a poster child for the world vision. All right, so enough of that. This is Neil at the China fashion show for the Hong Kong Trade Development Council. This is the January edition 2016. Neil from China Sourcing Academy. Thank you for listening. And if you're a buyer, this is where you need to be on the ground to learn from the suppliers so you know where your product is coming from. Increasingly, compliance with various environmental standards is increasingly becoming important in not only the first tier supplier but your second, third and fourth tier suppliers. So keep that in mind, buyers out there, and catch you in the next video. Bye for now.